Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second Schreiber Times podcast. You can now listen to our weekly podcast on IGTV, Spotify, or Anchor as of now. On behalf of the Schreiber Times staff, we want to wish everyone who celebrates a happy holiday, and we hope that everyone is safe, healthy, and doing well. I'm Emily Milgrim, and I'm joined here by my fellow junior classmate, Loewy, and for this edition, we're going to be speaking with Superintendent Dr. Hynes. Dr. Hynes, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing okay, and it's great seeing you, Emily and Noah. And for everybody who's listening, I hope everyone is well and staying inside, and we will get through this, I promise you.
Well, thank you for doing this with us and taking the time to do this interview. I'm sure you're very busy, so we'll try to keep this as brief as possible. But how have you personally been coping with social distancing? Do you still come to your office? Do you have any recommendations for how, as a community, we can cope together?
Wow, that's a great question. I wasn't expecting that, actually, Noah. How am I coping with it? So I am. I'm coming in between 2 and 3 times a week. Definitely on a Monday and a Friday, for sure. I want to end my week, and well, I should say start my week and end my week in the office, because there's something about physically being somewhere that makes me feel more grounded and connected to the community. Last week I was in Wednesday as well, where we had to distribute iPads to some of the families who don't have technology for our K through 2 students. So I went on a bus last week with the bus driver. We had several buses going out to some of our homes. So social distancing, I mean, I always wear a mask when I'm out in public. As far as when I'm driving around the Port Washington community, I try to limit that as much as I can. Unless, like I said, it's for a real purpose and a cause. I try to stay off the roadways as much as I can. A lot of the work that I do for the school district when I'm not there on Mondays and Fridays is clearly lots of phone calls. So again, we want to model those behaviors we want to see in everyone else, where they try to stay indoors, except if they have to go get food, of course, or if there's a medical emergency. But it's, like everything else, no, it's one day at a time. We listen to updates either from the governor or the president or anybody who's in the know, so to speak, and we try to make informed decisions. And then, like we were talking offline before, is letting the community know what we know in real time, or as quick as we can do that, so we are all on the same page.
Absolutely. Great.
Okay, thank you.
I thought I was waiting for a comment about. I was waiting for a comment about my hat. To be honest, Emily, I don't know.
I love the hat.
On purpose.
I like it.
I love it.
Thank you. I wear it all the time. My kids try to take it from me. I'm like, you're not touching my hat.
Is that the baseball one?
That's the baseball one. So any Port Washington apparel that comes my way, I try to showcase it as much as we can to have that sense of community. So yes, this is for the baseball team.
Awesome.
Okay, so you just briefly mentioned, which is awesome, the delivery of the iPads to members in the Port Washington community. Is there any other measures that have been taken to ensure that all students have access to the internet in one way or another, as it's the full remote learning is underway?
Sure. Yeah. And there's a couple of different edges, I think, surrounding that. So if we're talking K through 2 students, we're talking about the iPads. And I have to say, as far as the distribution success rate, we were, I think, in the 90% as far as trying to, make those things happen. So I'm very happy about that. And again, it came with Wi-Fi as well, because they're kind of useless if there's no Wi-Fi attached to it. So they can connect for remote learning. We also had a Chromebook distribution. We had 2 different days for that, for students and families in need of the technology that's necessary for remote learning. And that hasn't been as successful, to be honest with you. And, part of my job is to be totally transparent. I want to see 100% success rate for anything that we do. So we had 2 different, like I said, 2 different days and times for families to come to the particular school where their child goes for a pickup. So we're looking at a different way, possibly for round 3, to see if we can make that happen. But to be honest with you, not even from a technology standpoint, we still have some families that we're having difficulty even communicating with. So by the end of this week, we've called the homes many times. We've also now this week we'll be sending letters. And if we don't hear something by the beginning of next week, then to be honest with you, I will be going to the homes and paying a visit to make sure everyone's okay with, with our staff, because that is really important. Because when this is all said and done, and I know there's a lot of anxiety, especially for students, as far as grades and as far as, will I get into college? What's going to happen with fourth quarter? Will it be pass, fail? How will this impact me? And we will have answers for that very soon, I believe. For me, it's about wellness, and it's not about just basic needs, physical wellness, but mental health as well is very, very critically important for the school board, for myself, for my district office team, and for the principals and all administrators. And I know for the teachers too. The more that we are at home, the reality is, some of us have really nice home lives, right? We have all things that we need for the most part, but there are some families, and not just here in Port Washington, that don't have those basic needs met. So the longer they are home, the more difficult it can be in so many different ways. And we need to figure out ways to mitigate that as much as we can. And that's kind of where we are in the midst of all this too, is to make sure that we are connecting with people as often as we can. And again, the academics is extremely important, but there's a lot of other edges that are just as important as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And yeah. Shifting over towards the academics, I saw that, I think it was last Monday, the district released a continuity of learning document outlining the plans for remote learning, and we'll be sure to put that link down below. But to the extent possible, one of the goals is, to the extent possible, to continue to prepare students for the next grade level. And I mean, I would personally say the teachers are doing a phenomenal job, but there are obviously some limitations that are beyond everyone's control. So
Yes.
How will the district assess where there may be deficits in that?
Great question. And that's always ongoing. I think for anything that's rolled out, you always want to make sure that feedback loop is taking place. So the way I look at this is through two different lenses. The first is getting it up and running, making sure that there is a connection happening and there's communication between the teacher and then the student. I think for the most part, we've done a pretty good job at that. And you have to understand too, for the first 2 weeks, like most school districts, we didn't know how long we would be out for, right? So when this happened in mid-March, we're thinking, not knowing the severity of everything. 2-week window, it'll just be a review, a spiral review to make sure, there isn't a loss of, what I want to say instruction, but to making sure there's no regression, right? Then once we know, and we knew the governor shut it down until mid-April and then the end of April, that's a totally different ballgame, because now we're talking more than 4 weeks, right? And that's where the instruction piece comes in. And that's where we actually, as a school district, like most school districts, I can't say all, but most school districts had to almost do this in real time as it's happening, which is not an easy thing to do. That means from a professional development standpoint, teachers needed to, take classes to know how to use something like that we're using right now operationally. The sharing of documents, whether it's through Google Drive or any other platforms that are out there, to make sure kids are on board. And as we're doing this and teachers are being developed, and I agree with you, I think the teachers have done a remarkable job, as have the administrators. But now we need to continue to refine what that looks like, right? So now we know 3 through 8 exams aren't happening at the state level. We now know Regents exams aren't happening. So what other opportunities does this provide for our teachers and for our students to really dig into some things that maybe typically we wouldn't be able to do, such as project-based learning things and working on things longitudinally, not just for an hour, let's say, but maybe for a couple of days. How can we change that context? And I believe, because our teachers are really second to none, they are phenomenal. They are really amazing at what they do. And I believe each week it will get better and better. And there are certain metrics that we will have to look at and to really clearly distinguish how it is getting better and better. But right now, like I said before, like what we're doing right now, that connection piece, for me, that is the baseline. That's where it starts, is to make sure there's that contact time with the teacher. And then from there, we continue to make sure that there's a balance too, because there's a continuum when it comes to remote learning, right? There are some school districts where you're getting a workbook packet right? You're working on a worksheet. And then there are some school districts where almost like teachers are dropping in through the ceiling and they're teaching, kids for like 6 hours a day. I don't believe in either of those things. I believe in the sweet spot of balance. And I think we are working toward that balance right now.
I think that's a really good way of looking at it. We want to make sure that there's I like the whole idea of forming that connection first, because you can't have anything without that connection.
I agree with you. And believe it or not, even trying to get everybody, when we look at an organization of hundreds of teachers and administrators, getting them to a point where, they have to do this, right? There are some teachers who they knew how to do this like it was nothing, right? It was really intuitive. And then there are some, in the middle, let's say, that needed a little adjusting here and there to get it up and running. And then we have some, like in every place, where it takes a little more support to get them where that is. I believe where we are right now, we are at a place where it is imperative that we check in with students as often as we can. And not just with the students, but I would say even with the parents as well. Because we have lots of parents, and again, it's not just here, who are anxious, who don't know what to do. And we have some students, again, whether it's here or in other places, where it's almost too much work. Like they're getting more work than they've ever received before. And if that is the case, how do we reel that back if we have to? And on the flip side of that, if there isn't enough work, how do we make sure that that's taking place as well? So again, we will continue to refine this. It is by no means static, and I believe it will get better and better as the days and the weeks go on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense what you're saying about the teachers, and I've definitely been able to see that there's different teachers are adjusting to this differently, and the way that we've been handling it has been working. So as of today, you kind of said there is like this whole uncertainty factor where no one really knows how long we're going to be in this remote learning for. So is there any sort of time frame for a transition back to school? Like, is this a rest of the year issue we're looking at? Or even how will it impact our 2020-2021 school year?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, Emily. I think if you asked me this question 2 weeks ago, I would have probably said we'll be back in May. Knowing what we know now, and so this is the real trick, right, is knowing what news is real news, right? So you're trying to figure out, depending on which station you listen to. I have to be careful how I say this. I think the governor is doing a very good job keeping us updated in New York State. I think he's being very transparent. I think he is being extremely frank. And that helps us, I will say, as educators, thinking of what that means if and when we do reopen. Now, for those of you over the weekend that just passed, we heard that New York City schools were closing, right? And that was like, everybody was like, oh my goodness, like how is that happening, right? Then the governor, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours later said, no, that's not happening. Because the reality is, I believe if New York City schools were closing, that would set the benchmark for all other schools. But now the governor is saying that's not the case. He would be the one who's closing the schools, or would have to go through him. And if he did keep them closed, he would actually make sure this happened, not only in New York State, but he would coordinate with the governor of Connecticut, the governor of New Jersey, to make sure everyone's doing it together, which I think is a very, very smart thing. So for me to say, will we be back by next, let's say by the end of June, I am going to say, I hope so. I am always hopeful for that to happen. And I'm hopeful, but it has to be under the premise that our students and our staff will be safe if they do. And I'll just say I am hopeful that we will be back by the end of June. So for two reasons. One is, it sounds like we are definitely plateauing, which is great. I think that's a really, really good sign, but that's only because of the extreme measures, or somewhat extreme measures, of the social distancing and the closing of businesses, so on and so forth. I think that has made a significant difference, which is great. I I think the governor's concern, like a lot of medical professionals too, is that if you lift it too soon, it'll come back in a second wave. And if it came back in a second wave, who knows when we would return to school, which none of us want to see happen. I think about our seniors. I think about our seniors who are looking forward not only to graduation, but to the prom as juniors, junior prom, right? All these wonderful events that are happening. Right now, we are looking to make, we have to think worst case scenario. So, of course, we're planning. If that is the case, what will graduation look like, right? If that is the case, how would we have some of those big ticket items? How would we conduct that virtually? So we're having those conversations with our administrators. And, of course, there are no easy answers for this. The reality is there's no book on this. You can't just go to a bookstore and go, I wonder how we can deal with the pandemic in the school system. It's just not there. So the best way we can do it is to keep you informed as students and communities, and to make informed decisions, and to keep all of you, of course, in the forefront when we do. That's probably the best way I can answer that. That was a very long answer, but that's probably the best way I can answer that. Sorry about that.
No, I appreciate it.
That definitely answered it. Yeah.
And sorry. Going back into what you alluded to earlier about quarter 4. Can you just briefly go into with grading, or going back, or let's start with specifically with grading. Can you elaborate a little about the district's decision-making process, and possibly a time frame for when we'll be in the know?
Sure. So let me hit the rewind button and go back to third quarter first, and then I can talk about fourth quarter. So for the third quarter decision, I will say initially, personally, I was leaning toward pass-fail initially. And then, of course, when you talk to others, sometimes when you have more information, you make, I would say, a better informed decision. And of course, we like to look to our neighbors. I don't like to compare ourselves to our neighbors. I think that is not a good idea. I always want us to be better than what we were the year before, a month before. But when it comes to, let's say, universal practices such as grading, it is nice to know what your districts are doing to the east and the west of us, and even the south. And so it seemed like where some districts were leaning toward pass-fail initially for third quarter, then they did something like we looked and actually adopted for third quarter. And of course, we want administrator input, we want teacher input, teacher leader input, and that's the way we came to that decision for third quarter. Now for fourth quarter, this is a whole new ball game, because for third quarter, at least you were in school during the majority of the third quarter. So we can make those determinations to make that informed decision. Fourth quarter will be different because, and when I say different, doesn't mean the outcome will be different, but there are different things to really strongly consider, such as, you really haven't been in class the whole fourth quarter. So what does that mean? When it comes to the types of assignments, are we sure that everyone is getting that same assignment? And if they are they turning it in? And then what do the grades look like for that? These are all different things that we have to take into consideration before we make a blanket statement as far as this is what will happen to the fourth quarter. So we will be having conversations again, like we did for the third quarter, with our teachers and our administrators, and of course, then we would inform the Board of Education what we are looking to do, and then I believe in very short order we will let our students know and community know what that decision will be. But it's not made. I will say that decision won't be made in a vacuum.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Jumping kind of back to the mental health discussion that you touched on a little bit before, I agree with you that it's super important and a big challenge during this time, as everyone's stuck in their homes, obviously. So what do you think students and families should be doing to take care of their mental health during these unprecedented and obviously stressful times?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I think I have children of my own at home, and they vary in ages. So I'm going to answer this with I think two different hats, figuratively speaking, of course, not literally. The first one I'll answer as a parent, and I'll answer as a parent of a teenager at home. The social isolation aspect, regardless, let's say you were in a good place before this happened, right? And when I say a good place, like, you socially, you were feeling like, things are going well, emotionally, things were going okay. It has a deep impact on, I think, a lot of people. And that's for adults too, by the way. And so as much as I wasn't a technology fan, I mean, I'm a fan of it, but I didn't live and breathe it. Like, it wasn't my third arm. Like, I see, my kids at home, it's almost like it's part of it's an appendage. It's with them all the time. And I think during these times, to stay connected to your friends, whether it's through texting or through video chatting or whatever it is, I think that it is really important. The second is we do go outside. When we go outside, I don't mean like we roam around, into people's homes, but we go for walks. And we do that often. We go for a bike ride. We try to get out. I think getting that fresh air is incredibly important. And then, to be honest with you, one of the things that have, I think, fallen by the wayside from a community standpoint, or I will say as a society, I should say, is playing games with your family. Like, we're starting to play lots of games. We've been ordering games on Amazon, family games that keep us engaged and reacquaint us with one another. Now, there are times to be with your family, and then there are times you're like, I had enough of my family. I need to go somewhere else, right? Which I totally understand. And I think through time, you find that balance between when you are home and you are with your family, and then you have that special time. The last thing I would say is trying to find something new for you to pursue, that you are interested, that you never had the time to do before. Whether it's learn about something you always wanted to learn about, if you always wanted to be an artist, to figure out ways to try something new and different, to try art, try music. I can't tell you how many of the people I know are trying new instruments. Thank goodness I'm not in their house though as they're trying it. But the reality is they have this time and you want to try to maximize it to the best of your ability. Write poetry, whatever it is. I think going outside is important. Connecting to your family, if you have that type of relationship, is important. Maintaining some of those, relationships with your friends. And I don't like the social media thing. Kind of still bugs me out a little bit, because then we're always comparing ourselves to others. Look at this family. They're all doing all these great things. My family isn't. And we all know the reality is that's really 90% of the time that's not even true, what we see on social media. And then the last thing is I call them Twinkie moments. And this is, I guess I'm really aging myself here. So a Twinkie is really something that's bad for you, right? You have the Twinkie for a snack, and health-wise, you're like, this really isn't good, but it does taste good, right? I think it's important that we self-indulge every now and then, whether it's watching a show we shouldn't watch, that we know isn't bad for us, or I should say isn't good for us, or reading a book or something that may not be good for us. But doing something like that, I think, is very, very healthy, because then it brings us back to what's important to us in life. And I think if you look at it from those different vantage points, then of course, if you do need to reach out to a mental health professional, that, let's just say you were going for counseling before, right? You continue that through teleconference or through a phone call. That is incredibly important. As a school district, it's important if we have students who are speaking with social workers or school psychologists or guidance counselors, they continue those conversations if that's plausible. All of those different things. But the last thing I'll say, because I tend to go on and on, is that we have to understand, there's a great song by George Harrison. I love the Beatles. And this song by George Harrison, I would recommend to anybody. It's called All Things Will Pass. The reality is this will pass. It won't be here forever. We don't know the timeline per se, but we know it will come to an end. And by knowing that, and there's a modicum of hope out there, you need to understand that once this does pass, how will you be better for it? Like, how can you grow in some way? And that's what I'm trying to tell my friends. Like, what can we do once this is all done? The silver lining is, how can we be stronger for it and from it? And I'm hoping we can take advantage of that.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to do this with us. And we appreciate all you're doing for the school district.
Thank you. I miss seeing you all.
Anything else you want to add? Yeah.
No, I'll just add this. I mean, I can tell you, all the adults, we miss everybody. We really, we want to get back to, I don't think it'll be back to the way it was. I think it'll be better when we come back. I really, really do. And I think what this does is, it makes us understand how important school is. Like, I think some of us who maybe took it for granted know how important it is. And I can tell you right now, every adult, when you all come back, I'm hoping the social distancing is over so we can give everybody a big hug when you come back, because we really can't wait to see you all again. All right, so thank you, everybody, for the opportunity. And I'll be talking to you all very soon. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Hello and welcome to the Sports Corner of the Schreiber Times podcast.
We hope you are all staying home and healthy during this uncertain time.
We would like to introduce our first guest for the Sports Corner, Schreiber's own Miss Carey.
How you guys holding up?
We're good. How are you?
We're good.
Living, swimming, trying to make it work,
Yep.
one day at a time.
Yeah.
I appreciate the interview. Keeps me something on task.
All right. How have you personally stayed active during this time?
Well, when I first found out that all the gyms were closing, I was like, oh no, what am I gonna do? So I ran over to Dick's Sporting Goods, and clearly I was not the first person to do that, because there was just the shelves were almost like the supermarkets, empty. There's 2-pound dumbbells, 5-pound dumbbells. There were a couple things left. So I ran from Dick's, I ran to Target. I was able to pick up a couple pieces of equipment to bring home during the time. I got a pull-up bar, which is cool. I think you can kind of see it right there. So I set a goal to start working on some more pull-ups. I have a Bosu ball, Swiss ball, kettlebell, some light dumbbells, but I'm getting creative. The other day I took down my carry-on suitcase, and I filled it up with a bunch of water bottles, and I started chest pressing it. I started pushing it.
Yeah.
I took the tire off the back of my Jeep.
Oh, wow.
And I've been doing hops in and out of the tire. There's also I've been walking the dog, lots of dog walks, jump rope. And there's a ton of, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a ton of people that are doing live, just a Zoom or a workout class.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
And if you don't do the Zoom, they're also available on Instagram. So if you have an Instagram account, they're doing them not only on Zoom, but you can join on Instagram. So if you're not computer savvy or whatever, but you have an Instagram, you can follow the workout the same way, whether you want to join. For me, I miss the accountability. I have a ton of internal motivation, but I miss the atmosphere of going to the gym and, having my friends there, taking a class, the competition of other people in the room. So having the Zoom and seeing other people with you is super helpful. So I made a schedule of when the live workouts are, and I'm all right, I'm going to the gym. So I go upstairs, I go into my room, and I take my equipment and I sign on, and it's working. I'm really grateful that some of these instructors are doing it. It's free. They have I guess it's just them helping themselves keep busy and accountable, and us accountable, and I'm enjoying it. I actually wrote down the name of some of the accounts if you guys want to list them that are doing the live workouts.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So, because along with that right now, you're very self-motivated, but for a lot of the students, they might be running into those roadblocks of how can I keep myself active and keep myself motivated,
Right.
The loss of sports and the loss of the gym being closed, everything like that. So along with those taking advantage of the online classes, what else do you recommend to keep students motivated?
Definitely hold each other accountable. My friends from the gym, I can't see them, but I'll FaceTime with them. I'll send them my workouts. What did you do today? how did it go? Well, we'll work out together on FaceTime. I'll do 10 burpees. She'll do 10 burpees. Just ways to hold each other accountable to keep going. And I think the live, interaction of that, even though it's not in person, is helpful because it's not just some random video on the computer that I can stop or fast forward. I could turn it off, but I could turn it back on and the person is still there doing it live. So I think that's helpful. And getting creative. There's so many things out there. I know you guys are like big TikTokers. I don't know if you guys are, but I know TikTok is like the new thing. I just downloaded it, the app, which has been keeping me quite entertained. I should be doing something more, I think, beneficial with my time, but I did run into some awesome fitness challenges on there. So I just did my first one.
So on Twitter, we saw that you did like a bunch of some challenge with like push-ups. Can you explain a little bit more like about that and what it was? And what's your goal for the challenge?
I, again, just like want to motivate other people. If I can't like be there to physically do it with you guys, at least if I'm leading by example and I'm like, hey, listen, like I'm not just sitting down doing nothing, I'm moving too. Because I think that, the physical health leads to good mental health. I think those two work together. And just even if it's 10 minutes a day, it's better than 0. So by leading by example, I'm posting, I'm sharing. I got a couple people sending me push-ups back. So I'm hoping my TikTok fitness challenge will get a little bit more people involved.
Do you want to shout out your TikTok so people can follow you if they're listening?
Yes, it's Miss MS Carey, Carey 215.
Okay, we'll try.
So do you plan on posting more videos like that to try and challenge students through social media, whether it be Twitter or TikTok?
Yes. Have you seen the t-shirt challenge?
No.
No.
That one's fun, but I'm afraid that if I post that, people will try it, and I don't want anyone to get hurt.
Okay.
If someone is like doing a handstand against a wall and then putting a t-shirt on while in a handstand.
Oh wait, I did see that. I take it back.
Jake Gyllenhaal put it out. Tough, very tough. But yeah, I definitely plan on sending out some more challenges. I'm gonna post them to my Google Classroom. That's another way. I've also been posting some workouts to my Google Classroom. Gotten some feedback from it. If I can get 2 of my students to do it, I did my job. You know what I mean? If I can get 20 or all of them, that's amazing. That's even better. But if I can get a couple kids to move during this time, that's awesome. So I do plan on posting more. I got to do more fitness challenge TikTok looking.
Cool, that's great.
Maybe I'll take away from the push-ups. I know a lot of people are like, no push-ups. I'm like,
I'm one of those people.
so I'm gonna switch it up a little bit.
Okay.
And then, so in regards to like school activities, being obviously a gym teacher, how do your like assignments for like homework instead of gym class aim to get those students motivated as well, whether they're not the most active students who are just in a regular gym class?
So in the beginning, it was definitely, uncharted waters. It was like, what are we doing? Are we going to be giving like fitness assignments? Are we doing cognitive? So I was trying to like mix it up a little bit. I gave an assignment out on like a quarantine vision board on ways like, we have a lot of time on our hands, but like I think even with all the time on our hands, it's really easy for that time to get away. So things that we would want to get done during this time, whether it's read a book, clean your room, I'm trying to learn to walk on my hands, just things to keep you active and moving and goals. Now I'm moving more towards the physical part of it. I recently just posted, it was like a spelling fitness workout. So I have Aidan and Aphrodite, they're both of my students. I posted, 11, 12? You guys are my 11, 12, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So we were supposed to be doing badminton?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the words that I gave you guys, it was like one was badminton, one was Vikings, all different words, and each letter was like a different exercise.
Okay.
And then you spell the word through the exercises. And I did every single one too. So like I posted my videos, I posted my times. And again, I hope by leading by example that I can encourage my students to do the same thing. Next week, I'm going to post something similar, just with different words, but I'm actually thinking about creating like a spreadsheet where everyone can kind of go in and add their times and see, like, I mean, it's not, wouldn't be required, but almost like, okay, Aidan did 1 minute and 50 seconds on the word Vikings. You know, I'm going to try and do 1 minute and 30. You know, Miss Carey did 1 minute and 40. You know, can I beat her?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like a little friendly competition. You know, I'm trying to not let you guys beat me, and I want you guys to beat me at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, as one of your students,
help you guys stay active.
yeah, I think as one of your students, it was great because gym is such like an in-school class, and other classes may have had an easier time transitioning over into online learning, but I think like the gym teachers have done a great job. I mean, Aidan can probably comment on it also, but I feel like from the assignments, it's been nice because they've been keeping us active, but also like relating to what we're doing, like the vision board you mentioned, also like other stuff. So I feel like it's teaching kids too, like how they can work out at home now that they're forced to.
Right. That's what tying back into like getting creative. Like there are so many things that you can do in your home, even if you don't have any equipment. If you don't have a pull-up bar and you don't have any weights. Like the other day I was using like little washcloth towels, and I was doing like reverse like lunges with the towels. I did, you know, up and down my staircase, and I was holding I had dumbbells, but you know, like you guys can hold laundry detergent. You know, I was holding a big thing of laundry detergent and I was doing squats with them. I did tricep kickbacks with soup cans. Again, filling up my suitcase with water. There's
exactly.
You gotta think outside the box right now. Forcing me to be really creative. I think that's gonna be one of the things that I put out next is ways you can work out in your home without any equipment. And there's so many apps out there. There's apps out there that you can use that involve no equipment.
Right, please.
Yeah,
you
thank
guys,
you.
you guys too.
Stay safe.
You're not alone in this, and if there's anything I can do, please feel free to reach out to me personally. Happy to help.
Thank you, Miss Carey.
Thank you.
Thank you.